You are listening to I Survived the Wild Outdoors podcast, where real outdoors men and women share their heroic tales of survival. I'm your host, Brad Mathewson, and this is their story. My guest today is a familiar one. Those of you who subscribe to the podcast will recognize the name Lon Reedburn from South Dakota. Lon's story of almost losing his leg and life due to an accidental discharge from his hunting buddy's deer rifle appears on episode 6 and is full of valuable life lessons on hunter safety. I encourage those who haven't downloaded it yet to give it a listen. During that episode, while sharing his traumatic experience with me, he let it slip that this wasn't the first time he had been shot. Lon briefly touched on the event, and I wanted to bring him back to share the full story. As Lon is a lifelong advocate for hunter safety classes and even starred in a commercial for the South Dakota DNR promoting his cause. Good evening, Lon. Can you tell us what happened that led to your accident?
Sure will, Brad. Thank you. I was an avid hunter, and I like to, whether it was duck, geese, deer, whatever. But on this particular day, I was driving down the road, and I had my two nephews with me. And when you're driving down the road, you're talking, and everybody talks big and talks fancy. Well, we was driving to my grandma's place, and as we got just about to it, we looked off to the left, just right beside the road, and I said, "Look at that, guys." And the sky was just full of ducks. I mean, it was one of them, you know when you see them circling and you see their wings locked up, they're going to land. In this particular case, these ducks were going to land in a dugout. Now, around here, the dugouts have got banks on each side. When they dig them out, they pile the dirt up in that. And we slowed down a little bit, and I don't know how many ducks or how many you can possibly get in the dugout, but they had to be sitting on top of one another because there was a lot of them. And we just sat there, and I said, "All right." I said, "We're going to go up on that dugout, and we're going to get ourselves some ducks." And we thought we waited until all the ducks landed in that. There were still a few that were still circling. So my one nephew had a gun, the other one didn't have a gun, and I had a shotgun too. And we started walking toward the dugout. And we got just about to the dugout, and I said, "Okay, Dave," I said, "now this is what I'm going to do." I said, "You and Bob come up on this side of the dugout." And I said, "I'm going to go around the other side, and I'm going to wait there until you shoot, and you chase the ducks over, and then I'll shoot." "Yeah, okay, oh yeah, we'll wait." All right. So I got down, and I snuck around the dugout, and, you know, the ducks are just, the more they were quacking in that, the more excited we was getting. Like, boy, we got to hurry up and do this because there's a lot of ducks there. And I snuck around the bank, and I got behind the bank of the dugout, and I just kind of laid there. I thought I laid there for a while, but it wasn't very long. And I thought, I wonder if he thought I was coming over the bank first or he was. And so I thought, well, I'm going to edge over that. Maybe I'll just get over it and start shooting and chase them over those guys. So I got down real low, and I started going over the bank. And as I was just kind of getting over the bank, you know, the ducks were sitting in the water all around it. And I just got up and I ran to the top of the dugout, and I pulled up, and I shot once. And just like that, on the other side of the dugout, my nephews, they come up over the bank, and he started unloading. And, you know, we didn't pick out no ducks to shoot. We were flock shooting. And he shot through the flock or missed, I don't know, missed a few ducks or whatever, but he kept shooting, and one of his shots just hit me right below the waist, from the waist down to my ankles. It hit me, and I fell down to my knees, and my gun rolled down, well, just about in the water. It was it hurt. I got hit so hard that my jeans and that, you could see BB holes in them and that, and oh, he come running over there and he says, "I shot you. I shot you." Oh, I said, "Yeah." I said, "I thought you were going to go over first." And he said, "No." He said, "We were just waiting and waiting. And I shot you. I shot you." He said, "What's Mom and Dad going to, what are we going to do?" And the only thing I could do is, I don't know. I just said, "Dave," I said, "can you get my gun?" I said, "It's down there by the dugout." And he went and he picked it up, and he took all the shells out of it, and he handed it to me. And I kind of used it for a crutch for a little bit to get back to the pickup. And we got back to the pickup, and he was just shaking. He just, "What are we going to do, Lon?" And I said, "Well," I said, "we should let's just see what happened." And I took my pants off and took them down, and there wasn't too many places that there wasn't blood running down my legs, all over. I mean, there was a lot of blood.
Wow.
And he just says, "Oh no," he's, "what are we gonna do? And what are we gonna do?" He says, "You're bleeding." I says, "I don't know." I said, it hurts." And I said, "This burns." And I sat there and said, "Well, we better get in the pickup." And he says, "What are we going to tell our folks?" Well, I says, "We won't tell them nothing." And we got back there, and I think they kind of smiled something was wrong, but we never said a word. We didn't say a word until things happened the next day that they found out about it. But what, you know, why did we try to think? Why did I think I had to come up on one side of the dugout, him on the other? That's the stupidest role, the stupidest thing that any hunter can do. What's the first thing they tell you? What's the first thing? You be safe, know where you're shooting, and be together. But
Yep.
we seen ducks, and we seen, boy, we're gonna load it up, and we never carried it. Maybe we got a duck or two. We don't know, but we never carried a duck back to the pickup. We had other concerns in that, but how stupid, how dumb. I was the old one with them. He had just got his hunting license. I knew better. I absolutely knew better. And why did I ever do that? I just completely lost control of my senses, and it was wrong. It was just the wrong thing to do. You look back and you say, "Oh boy, it could have been worse. You bet it could have been worse. That would have been 3 foot higher. There could have been other things that got hurt, or there could have been loss of some eyes." And was it worth it? No. Was it stupid? Yes. And to this day, them nephews, I've never forgot that. Never, ever forgot that. And it, it made them different duck hunters when they go. I'll tell you that. But it was a horrible, horrible feeling and a horrible sight. And especially when all you heard was one blast and another blast, and then it just hit me and lifted me right up. I don't, yeah, it just, I wish I could write a book on all the don'ts, because I've done them all. And I just hope and I just pray that anybody who goes duck, do it. Don't jump a dugout. Don't come up the wrong side of the dugout. Just hunt them the way you should. Hunt them the safe way. And I completely lost all my senses when I was hunting there because I only had one thing in my mind. Just like buck fever, I had duck fever, and that was not a way to end the day.
Can you tell us how your parents end up finding out?
Oh well, my mom worked in town, and my dad was a bus driver, and no matter what, you think you're going to hide things from your parents. Don't ever think that. But next day I went to school, and I had my brother. I had him write out a fake deal for me to go to the doctor so I could get out of football practice. And I went to the clinic, and the lady in there says, "What's wrong, Lon?" I said, "I think my legs got some pellets." And so she put me on a gown and she pulled them down. My God, she says, "Lon." She said, "What happened?" I said, "Well, I told her the story." She said, "Have you told your folks?" I said, "No." She said, "Are you going to?" And I said, "No." I said, "I don't want them to find out." She says, "Lon, you have to." She said, "This is serious." She said, "We've taken x-rays. There's nothing we can do. Them pellets are so deep in your bone." She said, "There's nothing." And they were still kind of bleeding a little and that. I had Band-Aids all over and that didn't stop. But she says, you need to. She said, "I'm not going to tell her." Well, I said, we'll see. I said, maybe later and that. I said, if I tell her, she's going to take my gun away from me. She said, "Lon, what would you just soon be? Completely." She said, "You could have lost your eyes." She said, "What?" She said, "Do you know what the repercussion of what you could have happened?" Like, "Yes, I know." So she said, "All right." She says, "I'm going to leave it up to you." But then I went back to school and I went back to football practice, and my legs were sore. It was hard to maneuver in that. Well, we got home that night and we milked cows, and Dad and I was milking cows, and Mom come walking in, and she says, "How's everything going out here?" And I'm, "Oh, good." She says, how many we got left to milk?" And I don't know what I said. And she says, "I put that ointment or that salve on your bedroom." She said, "The pharmacy put it up on the counter, but it's next door to where she worked. They brought it over to me and said they thought maybe it was important." And she says, then I called the clinic. Oh, I said, "Oh." And then Dad says, "What happened?" And so I had to tell him, and I had to show him what happened. And he just looked, the look. And then that was, "You did wrong. You did wrong." And I told him, I said, everything I did wrong. And they said, "You could have been killed." I said, "Yep, could have been." But I said, "Them ducks are pretty tough." And I said, "I am." No, they said, "This ain't no laughing matter." He said, "This is a serious deal." And Mom and Dad did take my shotgun away from me the rest of the season, which they should have. But I learned a lot of lessons in a couple of days there. It's about hunting and about tell your folks what happened. And like I say, it's I could write a book on the don't do it. I just hope kids or adults, I don't care, hunt respectfully, hunt the right way. This is just too many things that could have happened in that, and for these nephews to be part of this and to see it affected their hunting in the next few years. And that ain't what it's about. We always got together to hunt, and it just there was a separation there that, well, maybe next year we'll hunt and all that. So um, it was it, you just got I knew better. I knew better, and I'm just I guess I'm just thankful that I can get up and get around.
So, did your parents ever take you back to the doctors then?
They took me back a couple of times.
Okay. Were they able to remove any of the pellets?
Not a one. They were pretty deep into the bones. She just said that we'd have to cut. She says quite a ways, and she said that there's no need to. She said there's no need to try to get them out. And I don't know how many. The one leg, I must have been turned just right because the one leg got a lot of them, and then the other leg got a pretty good share. But back in those days, we had our own shells, we had our own reloads. Sometimes maybe we didn't get quite enough or too much in it, the powder. But when it hit, the burning and the hurt was it was immediate. And when I went down, I knew exactly what, when I was down on all four, why in God's name did I do this?
And that was all lead back then, right? It wasn't steel shot like we have, or tungsten nowadays. It's all
Right.
lead.
It was all lead.
And they weren't concerned about lead poisoning or anything?
No, she took some kind of and put stuff on where the holes were going, and I can't remember what antibiotics or whatever it was, but I had to wrap my legs up every day in this gauze or something that was coated with something. I don't know what it was, but my leg was about twice as big around as it should have been. But the only time I noticed it the most was when I was playing football. If I got hit, it hurt.
Yeah.
It hurt, but there was something about that gauze and all that, because Mom had to put stuff on it and then wrap it, and maybe it stopped the infection. I don't remember, but that's been over 50 years ago.
Yep.
And it was different then. But I've had X-rays on my legs and they just said, "You've got all kinds of stuff in the bones." Yep, sure do. What happened? Well, I wanted to be heavier, so they put some lead in me. And then you tell them the story, and they just, "Hey, you got to be kidding me! You got to be kidding me!" And that when we went through the other cast on when I got shot with the deer rifle, they looked at the first thing he said, "You got a lot of pellets in your legs, in your bones." He says, "We're trying to pull your bones together to heal them." But he says, "You have a lot of issues going on with lead shot, with pellets in your legs." So he says, "We're going to have to monitor it when they tried pulling the bones together," because he said one sign of infection. And he said it wouldn't be a good thing. So, the deer rifle accident, and then with the lead shot, it just compounded. How stupid can you be? Well, I can write a book.
I think a lot of people think that, maybe they don't think bird shot is dangerous as what just a single bullet is. Because they're thinking, oh, you're just shooting a little tiny bird. How could that possibly hurt me? You're just shooting a duck. You don't ever think of human-sized targets and, all those little BBs. And all it takes is that BB just to hit one little vein, like the main artery somewhere. It doesn't have to, when a rifle or a shotgun slug or a rifle bullet hits and mushrooms out and does all that, creates a giant wound channel. It's not doing that. It's just hundreds of little tiny BBs, and all it is one BB just to hit that carotid artery or any of those other main arteries, and man, you bleed out so fast.
Yep. And the lead shot back then, this wasn't, how would I say it? We reloaded. our own shells, and it's pretty good sized lead shot. It wasn't the small, it's pretty good size, but I can tell you one thing: when I took my pants off and I held them up, sure had a lot of holes in them, and that's no kidding.
Looked like a cheese grater, maybe.
It sure did. It's just like it was just my mom. She held on to them for quite a while, and she always reminded me when we went hunting. She said, "You know, them pants are in your top drawer. Do you remember?" "Yes, Mom, I remember that." She says, "Okay." She says, "Just so you remember," she says, "be safe." So how many times does a guy get before he learns a lesson in that?
Yeah.
It seemed like I went. It took me quite a few.
Do you remember how old you were when this incident happened?
I was 21.
21. Okay.
Yep. I was 21 years old. And at that time, when we took hunter safety course and all that, we couldn't hardly wait. Wow, we get to go out hunting pheasants. My folks let me carry a 410, and even before that, with no shells. You're going to learn to carry it in the field, barrel up in the air. You're going to learn to carry that. And I did. I carried through a lot of cornfield a 410 with no shells. That's what taught me. And they taught me how to shoot. Know where you're shooting. Know what's behind it. Don't shoot down the corn rows. It was things like that. And I knew all that stuff. And I absolutely let the shield down, and I did the most stupidest thing there possibly could have been on this earth.
So basically, you just ignored all the main rules.
Yep. I lost complete on everything. The only thing I could think of was, can't wait to show them all the ducks we're going to get here. Well, my goodness, that's all I thought about. And a reverse deal. What happens if I'd have shot across there and hit my nephews? It hindsight, whatever, but it's just a horrible to hear all them ducks and to see them and then hear the blast, and you just fall back. And I mean, I went down and I rolled down the bank a little ways. I knew, like I say, it was pretty forceful, and it was pretty trying for the two nephews.
Yeah. Well, you're lucky to be alive for sure. And I've said it before. I'll keep saying it over and over and over again. Is the good Lord must have been looking out for you that day, and that day was not your day. He had bigger plans for you, and that day was not your day to meet your maker for sure. So
you think he's thinking, well, I've got my hands full here with him.
Yeah, I probably thought, well, hopefully he doesn't fall into this problem again. And
yeah,
a few years later,
yep,
it happened again.
Yeah, it sure did. Just think what happened. I'm sure glad I'm not good at, or I didn't take up archery.
No.
No, I love hunting. I love fishing, and there's nothing more rewarding than to watch and to go out with the grandkids now and watch them hunt. That now it's with the roto ducks and all this stuff. They're doing it the right way, calling them in and shooting them.
Yep.
It's just why? Why did I think I had to go kill how many ducks, and why? It was the sportsman. I wasn't a sportsman. I was just a killer that day.
Yep.
But I lost everything, and it just I didn't get to play a football game, but I got it. I still played football.
Yeah, that's why hunter safety plays such an important role in kids' lives, and it's like I said, it's important. It's nice to hear that your parents at even a young age were taking you out into the field, even though you didn't have a loaded weapon, and they were still teaching you the basics of hunter safety, the basics of how to handle a weapon, what direction to hold it.
Yep.
Make sure your chamber is always empty until you're ready to fire, or your safety is always on, or all those little tips. If you're crossing a fence, hand your gun over to someone else. All those little safety tips.
Just coming to the end of the cornfield. Okay, Lon, what do you do? We're going to get in the back of the pickup. Okay, open the chamber. They were so conscious about this is safety. We don't want anybody to get hurt. And thank God for them, because they took the time and they showed me all the right way. Maybe I disrespected them for that 10 minutes there. I didn't mean to, but I did. But like I say, everything was wrong. Everything I did was wrong. And everything they taught me, I didn't remember it, but guaranteed after that, some of that came back to me.
Yeah, and a lot of that it was youth and inexperience, and we all made mistakes in our youth, and sometimes it cost someone their life, and sometimes it was just it's a horrible injury, and you can come back from it and not make that mistake again, and be able to teach others so they don't make that mistake in the future.
Yeah, listen to your instructors. Go to your ask questions. If you don't ask questions, but my goodness, always take that hunter safety course and go through it. And like I said, I'm thankful that I had folks, and I was thankful that I have older brothers, and they taught me a lot about safety too. So a moment of dumbness, but I just hope that I can help a handful or one person. Just don't lose that. Don't lose it.
Well, thank you so much, Lon, for coming on again.
Yeah, sorry it wasn't much, but yet it's just part of. We got to be safe. We have to be safe. We want to be able to come back tomorrow and hunt, the next day and hunt. Don't let this ruin your whole life as far as hunting.
Well said. The United States has an annual average of 15 million hunting license holders, making it one of the most popular recreational activities. It's estimated that nearly 1,000 people are accidentally shot while out hunting each fall. Of these accidents, approximately 100 result in death. In comparison, 4,013 people per 100,000 participants are injured in football versus 27 per 100,000 out hunting, making football injuries 149 times more likely than hunting injuries. It's important anyone shooting a firearm be sure of their intended target and what's beyond. No one can call a shot back once a gun fires, so don't shoot unless you know exactly where your shot is going to hit. Life is too precious to be lost being careless with a firearm. Remember to stay safe out there and enjoy all that Mother Nature has to offer. If you like what you heard today, click the subscribe button to hear more upcoming stories. If you or someone you know have a survival story you'd like to share, contact me at isurvivethewild@gmail.com.